Hello, Dirty Laundry listeners. Hope y'all are doing all right today. How you feeling today, B?
Feeling great, feeling great. Really excited about today's episode.
Yes, I
Oh my
am
goodness.
too. We have some special guests here with us today. We are going to be talking to some family, actually, my aunt and uncle. And we're going to get into some deep conversation today about trauma in
Yeah,
marriage.
we've talked a little bit in previous episodes about the traumas and dramas that we experience individually, and then also when in a relationship as well. So, as we're married, there might be some things that we have to endure, and that's going to change and shape, sometimes alter how we feel about each other and how we feel about the road that we're going to travel together down the path. So, really excited about the opportunity to speak with this couple who have endured so much.
Yes.
But now they're in the enduring stage of the love, right? That
Yes.
love phase. So
Yeah,
really
right.
looking forward to that.
Yes. So they have been through, unfortunately, I guess, a lot of traumas in their life. And I know that they'll be able to speak to a lot of people that can relate, and not just traumas as a married couple, but traumas within their childhood and their young adolescent years. So I'm really excited for them to be here. They have a lot of experience. They are on a lot of committees and they provide a lot of support to their local areas. And so I'm excited to introduce Joe and Heidi. Um, so tell us about you guys. Just kind of tell us how long you've been married, whatever you want to share.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, we're coming up on 35 years of marriage in a few weeks.
Yay.
Excited about that. We raised two children, Stephanie and Adam.
So how
Steph,
did you meet? So
Right.
tell us about
Yeah,
yourself.
tell
Who
us
are you?
how you met. That's great.
We met at there's a place in Columbia, Missouri called Maxie's, and I had a friend that wanted to go out and have a beer, and I said, "Nah, I really don't want to." And he said, "Well, I'm buying," and I'm like, "Well, let's go." And so,
and I had a friend who said basically the same thing, and I didn't want to go out. And I said, okay,
Wow.
I'll go.
but the one thing that I can say is that I saw her first,
You
and
did.
she looked like somebody that I would really like to get to know more, and so I asked her to dance, and I was totally expecting a no answer, and to my surprise, she said yes. And then I just asked her a little bit about herself, and she worked at the Columbia Missourian. And so that next week, I called the newspaper and asked for a Heidi. And she answered. And we started talking. And I asked if she would like to go out to dinner. And so we did. And we went to Red Lobster there in Columbia, Missouri. And we actually, for our very first date, shared a plate because we both just were
So
not very
nervous.
hungry, but nervous, just not hungry.
I
So
thought you were going to say you were a poor college student. You had to share a plate or
there was
something.
that.
There was that.
There was that.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, and actually Joe was 29 years old, I was 26. And we had both been with other partners previously, not married before, no children, but I remember when he picked me up, I was sitting in his car looking at his profile, and something hit me that never hit me in my entire life. I don't know this man, but he will be my husband.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
I knew in that moment, and it felt really weird. And
Yeah.
but because I thought, I don't know him, why do I feel this? But I felt
Yeah.
it to my core.
And I
Wow.
was mostly worried that I picked her up in an old international scout that was rusted out, and I tried shining it up. It was really, and my biggest worry was that it was going to keep running throughout the whole date.
And you know
Just
what my worry was? So my mother, your grandmother, Brittany, so when you walked in the door, in the front door, there was an enormous hole in the carpet. I mean, it was big enough, for my dog to lay in a circle. He's a standard poodle, so
yes,
yeah.
yes.
And I thought, oh, this is embarrassing. And Papa was smoking a cigar and Mom was smoking cigarettes. And I just thought, oh, this is not a
Lovely
good
family.
impression. And then what did you say about the hole in the carpet?
Well, I just thought, wow, these are pretty cool people. They're very unpretentious, and I thought it was just down to earth. I thought it was just fine.
Yeah.
Mm,
What a beautiful story of just opening yourself up to doubt and jumping into fear, right? You not wanting to go, either of you not wanting to
yeah.
go and saying, you know what, let me go ahead and take a chance, not knowing what you're going to find. And then you asked for a dance, Joe, and y'all been dancing ever since.
Right.
And it's just, that's
Yeah,
such
we have. Yeah,
a beautiful
we've
story.
known each other for over 36 years, and a few weeks we'll be married 35. And it was the best choice I could have ever made in my
Me too.
life. And
Me too.
Yeah. Well, that's a
and
blessing.
it
It
truly
is. It
is.
really is.
And the longer I know Heidi, the more I love her. The older we get,
Oh man.
the more in love we fall
It's
into with
true.
each
It
other.
goes both ways.
Yeah,
It does.
yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, okay, so we know how you guys met. So you guys meet. I know both of your past, obviously. So how did you all, when you met, did you ever before you, let's say before you even married, before you're serious, did you ever introduce any of those traumas, or did you find yourself maybe nervous to share that news, to know how that person's going to, like, is that going to be a red flag and they're going to be like, yeah, I'm not dealing with all that? How did you guys cope with that? Because not a lot of people can't maybe accept somebody's things that they've been through.
Right about that. And I don't know why. And I don't know why that just fell into place really easily for us, but we both had some major traumas that had happened, before we got married. And when we were dating, I I think it started when just one night Joe just broke down and my heart, just broke. And he had had a very traumatic event happen. And if you want to share
Well,
that.
sure. Yeah, unfortunately, in those really younger years, I was the victim of an extremely violent crime at the age of 22, and I was dating somebody at the time, and I was still in the military in the Air Force, and we were some a guy knocked on our door, and it was at her apartment, and I was there with her, and he asked to use the telephone, and this would have been in 1981, and there were no cell phones. It was just phones on cords. So it wasn't like completely unusual that somebody had a car problem or something was going on and they needed to contact someone. And so we said, sure, yeah, we're happy to help him. And then he entered the apartment and we went to get his phone, and then he pulled out a revolver and just stuck it in my face, and it went really downhill from there. And so, um, I just froze. Even though I was in the military, I was an airplane mechanic. I was not a fighter. I didn't really, I was just so taken by surprise. I just paused. Well, at that point, when you're at gunpoint, there's nothing you can do. And so at that point, for me, it was just survival for me and for her. And so, I mean, he tied me up and with my hands behind my back and my legs, and tied her up and raped her on top of me. And he just literally beat me unconscious. And I thought for sure, and he decided to leave. And then I'm really compressing the story, but he
Sure.
just, he left, and I thought he covered us up with a blanket, and I thought for sure that he was going to just shoot us through the blanket because we had gotten a really good view of him. and but he didn't, and he just left. And that uh, I didn't save her. So as a man, that I just wasn't the hero that I thought I should have been. I felt totally guilty, and um, and that how could such a terrible thing happen? We didn't deserve it. We weren't doing anything
Yeah.
Right.
to bad, and that just defined my life for a long time. And we ended up breaking up, and I went to Columbia, Missouri after that, where my parents lived, and decided that I wanted to go to University of Missouri, which I did, and it was really, really tough and did really good in the beginning because it was a new environment, a new place to live, and a new start. And but the trauma was still there, and I was making pretty good grades, but my mental health was just not good. And I went to counseling, and this counselor was beyond terrible, and I was just trying to let it all out. And the counselor, he said, "Well, you know, I'm sorry, but I just can't help but to be turned on by this story." And I just thought, what a
What?
jerk. And so, yeah, and I just didn't. I just thought at that point counselors were absolutely useless, and so I just didn't do that. Um, but and then, to be quite frank and honest, I started drinking, and just thinking that that would really help to soothe the pain. And it started off slowly at first, and then it over time it just got worse and worse, and to the point where I was drinking 6 to 12 beers every night. Still was young, had a lot of energy, and
Right.
I was still maintaining really good grades in school, but that was a problem I didn't realize that I was carrying. And it was like putting kerosene on the fire as far as mental illness goes, and
Yeah.
severe depression without really knowing what was happening to me. And and that and and years went by, and I think 7 or 8 years, 8 years, 7 years after that had happened, that's when I met Heidi.
Okay.
And I had had a few relationships in between, and they just didn't really work out. And probably from my own mental illness, because these young ladies were just wonderful people. But I couldn't maintain a really good, solid relationship. And so we talked about this here a few days ago. I was like a mess when I met her.
Well, I'm gonna have to add, when he said he saw me first,
Yes.
well, he might have seen me first, and I knew I was gonna marry him, right? So I had to
Right.
stick with it. And he kept pulling away, and
Mm.
like over scheduling things. Oh, I forgot I was supposed to do something with this person today or help this person move. And something just didn't feel right. And we just had that conversation one night, and that's when he broke down. And I think it was just really difficult for him to face having a relationship. And it's like kind of like we talked earlier that is she going to think I'm damaged goods? Is there
Mhm.
Right.
so then I open up. I was a victim of sexual abuse as a child for many years. And when Joe met me, I mean, I'm pretty outgoing. Most people would say I do public speaking, but back then I was like, in a
Very
shell. I
timid.
was
Yeah.
very shy and very scared of the world. And and that was my trauma, my trauma. And then the first boyfriend that I had, I was 17 years old. And for 2 years, he physically abused me
Mm,
until I was finally able to escape that. Even came and returned to visit me 2 years later and tried to strangle me. And,
Wow.
yeah, and someone caught him and, and pulled him off of me. So I think we both had certain issues with trust as far as,
yes.
people,
Yes.
people
Yes.
went. And I think when you're young like that, and mental health awareness was not out there like
Mm,
as heavily as it
I
is today.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
So you didn't talk about these things and you kind of kept them to yourself. But we would share our stories with each other. And sometimes, I don't know how many times Joe has shared that story with me or vice versa. But when we would go to that place in our mind, that was how we coped with it. We had to tell that story. We had to tell it.
Mhm.
We had to tell it, and
Mm,
go through all that garbage and stuff and to be cleansed and to be
Right.
okay. But where that may push some people away, it brought us together because we had a
mm.
common grounds there,
Right.
and
Yeah.
we could empathize with one another.
That was the biggest thing for me is that Heidi from the very beginning had a very like understanding, empathetic ear. And so we both had sexual trauma and we were able
Yeah.
to share that with one another and understand what that other person had gone through. And for me, that was my life. I mean, could not get over the hump of saying, "Okay, I'm in a good place. That the past is the past, and it's time to move forward." It was very, very difficult, and
And in that relationship, it's kind of strange, but we were able to bond and actually have a healthy sexual relationship
Right.
without freaking out, over past events. And that never happened, before, at least
Mhm.
for me.
Right.
But knowing that he got me and understood, we were able to just kind of be able to separate that from our own relationship.
And so
And
what did that look like? And I'd hate to ask you to put it into like, chronological steps, but I'm sure that there have been people that have experienced traumas themselves and they're trying to make it work with their significant other, but they're having, uncomfortable conversations. And I love how y'all use the very important word of trust. How did you all learn to trust each other so much to not only share your stories and your trauma, but then to start becoming intimate, even though you've had violent sexual,
Experiences. Yeah.
experiences before?
right.
What did that look like if you had to, shape it into
I would
words?
not say that it like happened immediately, at least not for me. It
Hmm.
was kind of a gradual thing, but this man and his love and his compassion just warmed me to my core. I can't, it's hard to explain, but in a lot of ways in the beginning, maybe it was a little bit difficult, but overall it's been easy with him.
Right. Do you
I can't
think it's
explain it.
because he kind of gave you that safe space? Like, had it been
Absolutely
somebody that
did.
was like maybe they're doing something like even with their body language and was like, oh, okay, well, like maybe there had to have been something, that said this is a safe space, I feel safe, and that goes both ways. It seems like.
It does.
well, I just knew how it hurt her. I knew what it felt like to um, have sexual trauma. And so that's why I just let her do things at her pace and not try to
Mm,
push the issue.
It's very
And
patient.
yeah, just
Yeah.
stay, yeah, and just care about her first. And then whatever sexual relationship we might have is really more or less secondary to what her feelings were.
yeah, and what I glean from that is how imperative it is for you to communicate with your partner up front. Because say, for instance, one of you didn't share what you had
Mm,
experienced before. The other one's like, what is going on? Is it me? Like, why aren't you ready for this now? Like, but because you all were both willing to share your stories, you now have an opportunity to practice empathy,
right.
and patience with your
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah. That's true, and I've had people say that, like, that have dealt with sexual trauma, they've said comments like, "Oh, I don't like to be scared," or "Don't run up on me," like, there's things like that. Had you not told each other that, and you did something like that, that could have been like a red flag, like, "You know what? You're just doing something that is a trigger to me, and they don't even know why it's a trigger to you." So, thank
You
goodness you
know,
all were able to communicate.
yeah, you just made me think of a memory early on in our marriage. I could not sleep with my back to him. And it's nothing he did. I could not, do you recall
Mhm.
this? He could not spoon me from the back. It
Right,
had to be the other way around. And
So, Joe, you
I,
were getting
I don't know
spoons
when
initially?
that changed, but it changed over time.
right,
But it's exactly what you're talking
right,
about. It's like somebody coming up on you, and it wasn't him. It was just
right,
that trauma, PTSD
right.
is not
Yes.
a fun thing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
it was
I
a
was
gaining of trust, and yeah.
yeah, I was just worried about her. I mean, because I the whole time, especially early on, I was attacking myself more than anybody else. I was
Right.
because I just did not think I was, worth a hill of beans, because I let, a
Mm,
perfectly awesome young lady get raped right before my eyes,
Mm,
um, and this is, yeah, I was naive because I thought it was a that rape was a sexual act, and
right.
that has sex is really kind of a byproduct. It's as I have come to learn that rape is a power play, and that's all. It's just one person's power over another, and I didn't quite understand it all, and so as time went on, it felt like a broken leg, and then you just that took forever to heal, and you just kind of limp along and pretend that everything is okay. And as they say, fake it till you make it.
That's
But I
right.
wasn't making it. And when I met Heidi, I was for sure alcoholic, and I definitely experimented around with marijuana for sure, and thinking that that was really going to soothe the pain, but the pain just kept getting worse. But this woman, she was very understanding. Um, and as I said to her 1,000 times, to her, if I were you, I would have left me a long time
That's
ago, because when when we met, I was a drinker. I smoked Marlboro Reds. I didn't mind smoking marijuana at the time, and I just felt like I was a mess. And Heidi, for all intents and purposes, was not a drinker. She might have one. She was not a smoker, and she also had a wonderful personality. I mean, very like her. I always felt like her cup was half full, and here I am just literally attacking myself for my own like inadequacies, and um, you know, I guess that would be. I don't know what it was about now. It's been a while, but I just hated myself, and I just
Mm,
felt like um, I felt like alcohol and all the rest was the answer. And but what it did was just made things worse. And with Heidi, she she loved me, and and I still, even to this day, I'm like, wow, she still does. And it was a gradual over years change where started to see a different person in myself. But it was certainly with not because she she never like badgered me. She never nagged me. She never pointed out my deficiencies. I know she didn't like I smoked. I know she didn't like it, but she never nagged me about quitting. And I knew I needed to quit. And
Sure.
um, so,
And he's
and
been quit like 24 years.
yeah, so I quit smoking. I don't drink. I don't do marijuana. I mean, I love my sober life. I live a clean life through the power of Christ Jesus.
Yes.
And I just love having a clear head. And also, I'm a happy person today, and I feel very secure, content, joyful, and so it's good. And we do an awful lot of work. I don't know if I told you guys, but I have another full-time job. And
Oh no, you just can't stay retired, huh?
no, can't do it. Now we kind of, we go to that point, and then we have children. So we
Yes.
have Stephanie first and Adam, and um but we're doing really well. I mean, Heidi had a rocking business in Oklahoma. We lived in Broken Arrow, and she had a daycare. She never had to advertise, and she did a phenomenal job. And we both, of course, have degrees. Um, and then I was starting to kind of climb the corporate ladder a little bit,
Sure.
nothing spectacular. And like I was a scout leader for 10 years, and Heidi
Yes.
was a Girl Scout leader, and I helped coach their teams. And but we also tried to keep a little bit of distance, not to just, overwhelm their lives. And um, because I think we both had the same goals. And I was
Sure.
continuing with more education, and we worked hard, and we had great friends. We lived in a wonderful neighborhood. Heidi had a great business. I had a wonderful job, and I felt very constructive, very positive in those years. And
Yes. Now, can I
that
stop you for 1 second, Uncle Joe?
sure,
I just want to say too, I'm so glad you're highlighting all these positive things. Did you ever have a point during all of these phases that I would say are probably natural phases of life, right? Especially our goals, you're accomplishing them. Did you ever feel like those trauma, were you guys both like, we're healed, we're good? Or did you feel like, you know what, we never actually really healed or addressed those? We just kind of brushed it away or moved it to a place where compartmentalized it because like you both said in that time you didn't really have outlets. Did you have a support group? Did you have people talking to you telling you how to handle it, how to deal with it, or were you
Yeah.
just kind of moving it? Did it ever arise again? Like i
Yeah.
i
Oh,
love
yeah.
all the
Oh,
positive,
yeah.
but I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah. Over and over again.
Yeah.
And there is a thing called complicated trauma, complicated PTSD, which is my diagnosis. And it really was. I'll be 62 in May, and it wasn't until I turned 60 that I actually went through counseling and went
Wow.
through a program called EMDR, where it kind of is a reset. But what I learned is
We just heard about
when
this.
you have all these traumas, they hang out in the frontal lobe of your brain, and any little thing can just trigger. And so basically that EMDR helps you. It's like a filing cabinet in your brain. It helps you put things in the proper places, and so that you're able to deal with situations better when they arise. I waited that long.
Wow.
I wouldn't say, I will say that, and it's sad, but in 2014, when my father passed away, I was able to get rid of that trauma. The nightmares stopped, everything ceased immediately. While everybody else was mourning him and, oh, he was such a wonderful person, I was like, for you maybe.
Mm.
But that
That
wasn't
had to be hard.
my story. Yeah. But I respected that. I respected that. But for me, I remember going into the bathroom in his room right after they pronounced him dead. Went to the bathroom, they're all sobbing. I looked in the mirror and I said, it's done. It's time to move on. I said that to myself. And I
Mm.
was able to move on. So that chapter was done. but you
Right.
don't realize until later when other traumas build on that. Yeah,
Mhm.
these things start bubbling to the surface. And going to counseling was probably the best thing that I could have done.
I'm so
Going
proud of you.
out, I've done for years. I've gone out and helped other people through trauma. My
Yeah.
field is the mental health field now, and that's my job is outreach. And I can do that so easily, but I couldn't necessarily do that for myself.
And
Yeah.
I tried to fix myself. So it's like brushing it aside. It's like, I've got this. And I think, Byron, I think you can relate to this. It's like finishing your basement. It's like, by golly, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Well,
And
that
I
with
was the
the help
same.
of the wife that I have,
That's
you know what I mean?
amazing.
So there's that too. But yeah, I agree with you for sure. Yeah.
Well, and as a man, I think he felt like he was supposed to be strong and, and in charge and fixing everything that came around. And as the female counterpart to all of that, my thought was I could nurture everybody to wellness. And it's not that simple. It's just not that
Right.
simple.
That's very
Um,
interesting too, like the weight that you both were able to carry, although you have both dealt with, traumatic events. One is carrying the weight of manhood and saying, I got this, I'm gonna take care of it. I tried the counseling thing, that didn't work. I tried to be a good neighbor to this man, and he took advantage of uh me and my then significant other. Um, and it didn't work. So I'm gonna do it myself. And then for
Yeah.
you, Heidi, for you, well, it didn't work out for me, so let me try to make everything right for everyone else. Like, what amount of weight to take on, for one yourself, but then for also for others, like two different sides of a traumatic event, trying to get over it in different ways. Like, how did that work for the two of you? Like you, Joe, trying to handle it yourself, and then you, Heidi, trying to overcome your challenges and your strife by helping others. Did that
Uh,
affect your relationship positively, negatively, or
I think positively,
I would agree.
because just we think of our lives now, and we're up here in the north. It's cold. We've had that snow and really. But if you go to a beach and you're in uh, a very nice warm location, your life kind of soothes and your troubles seem to just melt away. And that's where we were, because our life was going really well. And I guess you could say that we were, on a sandy, sunny beach.
yeah,
And and we just started to heal little
That's
by
great.
little by little. And I think, Brittany, you said compartmentalize, and that's what I did. I just put it in its place and I just closed the door. And
For a long time.
yeah, and sometimes the door opened, but I can tell you 100% today, I'm 100% healed. And
That's amazing.
In
yeah.
that, then we fast forward and our kids are young teens and both are dealing with mental health issues, despite the fact that, we thought we provided this utopia family for them, and we checked off all the right boxes, right? And provided this world for them, yet they still became sick. And that was at 14 and 15 were their ages at the time, pretty much happened at the same time. One was worse than the other. Our son was worse than her at the time,
Mental illness.
with mental illness. A few years later, it was probably when Adam was 18 and she was 19. If we had to say that there was one dark spot in the marriage, Joe got a promotion and was transferred back to Missouri. And I think that was the first time, and we'd have been married how many years at that point?
20.
Yeah. And then we experienced a conflict between the two of us. There was not any less love, but he wanted to go. I wanted to stay. And I didn't feel like I had any power in that and any choice. And so I stayed behind for a year because I wanted to finish my business out. And our kids were struggling so badly. And they claimed they wanted to stay in Oklahoma. And I wanted to give them that year to be able to get on their feet if that was their choice. And it's kind of silly because it caused some strife between the two of us, but we were able to work through it because we just have that powerful love. And we both took turns on weekends driving back and forth from Kansas City to
Right.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, 4-hour drive, um, because it did mean a lot to us to keep our relationship together. But there was a lot of hurt, I would
Yeah,
say,
that's true.
and we were able to work through it. And then the kids ended up moving with us. Um,
Well, if you get to kind of frame that a little bit, I had been working very hard with a large insurance company, in the commercial fire underwriting division, and um, it sitting at a desk day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year for a very long time. So there was that part, and I was really wanting, I think, a change. The other thing too, and I'm just going to be honest about it. We had some financial issues, and they were pretty serious. And we owned two houses; they both had mortgages, and um, lots of other things that we had
Lots
going
of
on. We had
Kids
piling.
in and out of the
Yeah.
hospital, the
right,
expenses
Yeah.
just piled and
we
piled.
Yeah.
had we had significant, considerable, like life-changing debt. And it was just not good. I mean, we were both making good money, and then we got paid, and then we'd have $50 each to live on for a couple of weeks, or getting the water shut off a couple of times, and you're just always behind, and that was stressful. I'm going to say
Yeah.
that was stressful. Um, and I had gotten this opportunity for this promotion to move from Tulsa to Kansas City, and that solved a lot of problems.
The
Uh,
problem solver, just like
right,
we were talking about
right.
earlier, right?
Yes.
Number one,
Yeah.
as companies will tend to help you move. They'll buy your house, among other things. So we sold our two houses. We had lots of equity in one of them.
Yes.
And so we were able to basically nearly instantaneously go from whatever it was, I think $400,000 in debt to nearly debt free in just a matter of
Sure.
months. And
Sure.
so that was a huge advantage of moving. And and then we were closer to our parents. And then our kids were having a lot of trouble in Oklahoma, and they
Right.
were hanging out with the wrong people. And then we could get them out of that environment and give them a chance for a new start. It just really, to me, it was very clear. But I will never forget the day that I told Heidi, that I got the promotion, and I had pretty much made the
And we're
decision.
moving in 2 weeks.
Oh,
Yeah, and
wow.
That was the part that got me.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Right.
this is what she said.
Nothing.
2 weeks though,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
was
even the
just
military gives you
shocked.
more than 2
And
weeks.
what's
Right,
going through
right.
my mind, I have to give up 20 years of a business that I built, and so to
Absolutely.
me, that was a great sacrifice. And I needed that time to process that. And I think that was probably a good thing that I did that,
Yeah,
because if I had just rushed and left right then and told everybody, sorry, I know you signed contracts for the next year, but I'm leaving you, you know, um, I would have had a lot of guilt. I would have had a lot of resentment for that.
Mhm.
But he allowed me that time. It was
Right.
tough.
Yeah.
It was tough.
Right.
He was
Yeah.
living in an apartment in
Yeah.
Kansas, in Lenexa, Kansas, and he was paying for that. I was paying for the mortgage on that other the house that I ran my business out of, and so it ended up being the best thing we could have done to move, and
Sure.
we grew, of course, closer again, and then
Mhm.
and so beyond
But
that.
that was hard.
It was hard. That,
Yes.
it was a breaking
because
point.
one of your questions was, we never, ever, ever considered leaving each other.
No.
That was never a consideration, even though that was a dark, dark time. Matter of fact,
Right.
we've said from the very start, we will never use the D word.
Right.
It's not even a
Mm.
concept that's a
Yes.
possibility,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
never have, never will. And and we've just grown.
I heard you say that, but he allows you to have that time. And I'm thinking, about me and Brittany, like having been in that same situation,
Yeah.
and how Brittany would have thought about me having to leave, us having to leave in 2 weeks, or me accepting that promotion, what that conversation would have been like. Her response would not have been, okay, like we would have had, she would have been talking a lot more than that. But I say that to say, like, but you also afforded Joe the time he needed to, right? And then it ended
I
up working
did,
out.
but I
Like, how
regret
beautiful is
what
that?
he needed to hear from me was, "I'm proud of you and congratulations."
Yes.
Yeah,
And I
sure,
felt that, but I was just
sure.
so shocked, and I was kind of hurt that I wasn't part of that
Yeah,
process.
No, I
I
think
right.
mean,
that's
No,
human.
yeah,
That's very human.
yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
that's good. But
Well,
how
the
brave of you
conversation,
both. Yeah. I was just gonna say
yeah.
how brave of you both. One for you, Joe, to be like, you know what, this is gonna be so difficult. I know we need to do it though. And how great of an opportunity it is for me to really prove myself, almost like having gone through these things and me questioning my manhood, to say, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to take the reins here and make some really tough decisions to
Mhm.
benefit our family, and
Yeah.
not knowing what the sacrifice would have led to. And so, and then, Heidi, for you to just be like, you know what, I'm gonna stay back. Like, that's brave, you
Yeah.
know?
And you
Uh,
did it for the sake of
so
your children. I mean, that's what
yeah,
it sounds like, and your business, but I'm sure that was in the back of your mind. Like, there's a lot
Kids
going
were
on.
that was
I'm
the
going
first.
to
I'm
do that.
scared.
Yeah,
I was scared.
absolutely.
Our son was 18 when we moved here, and we had already lived through 4 years of multiple suicide attempts. And I was scared. I was terrified. And but coming here also brought me into the mental health field, where I was better able to communicate with my kids. Um, and Joe too. We both volunteered, for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, well, for going on 14 years now. Um, and now I work for them,
Right.
and it's very rewarding, but it did help us to communicate. It didn't prevent the ultimate suicide of our son, because he was very, very sick. And and I understand that. I don't like it, but I understand that. But he ultimately would have completed suicide no matter where we were. I know that now. If we had been back in Oklahoma, hindsight is 2020, right? But
Right.
I would not have had the support system that I had here,
mm,
with NAMI and with,
Mhm.
people that just banded around us. That was just incredible. And the church that we ultimately ended up, belonging to. That was after his death, but all of that would not have happened were we
yeah,
still back there in Oklahoma. We would have still been
Right.
trying and trying and trying. And, a lot of people blame one another with the death of a child, especially a
Yeah, it's
suicide.
unfortunate.
yeah.
We never went through that. But do you
Mhm.
think that would have been different if we were in Oklahoma?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Because not only did she have a business and all of its pressures, and I had all of my pressures, then we had a son who was severely mentally ill with schizophrenia. Um, and my approach was, I'm I'm going to be dad. And I mean, he was a freshman in high school and he just walked out of school. And I'm like, no, 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 we're not going that direction. You must be in school. And I was, bringing the hammer down saying that this is not how things are going to work. And with the benefit of hindsight, um, you know, there's really nothing we could have done to relieve those symptoms of mental illness. It
Right.
just was what it was. And he had very strong hallucinations. And it's not one of those things where you just pull yourself up by the bootstraps and power through it like most of us can.
Right.
And the symptoms just got worse and worse. And Heidi and I got better and better at communicating, and we decided to take the approach, well, let's learn what this is about. And our
Right.
communication with any and Nami gave us a life because we then understood what we were dealing with and we understood how to communicate, and our relationship was a lot better with him, even though the illness was very, very strong.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Aunt Heidi, you said something like, well, when people lose a child, sometimes they're more torn apart. You guys did stay together, but there's also um a relationship with becoming disconnected because of trauma, because I can only imagine losing a child is traumatic. That is not something that everybody deals with. And so did you ever, maybe you were still there, but were you disconnected? Were you disconnected in multiple facets? Were you like, I'm here, but I'm a robot. I'm just kind of going through the motions.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's almost like an out of body experience. You feel like this is surreal. This didn't happen. And one of these mornings when I wake up, I'm going to realize that was a nightmare and it didn't happen, but
Yeah,
it's real.
but it's
Yeah.
real.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Another
yeah.
part too is like, having dealt with all of these traumatic events, um, most people would ask like, why me?
Yeah,
And live this life of, I'm just, the pedestal of other successes. I'm going to be the sacrificial lamb. Why am I having to go through all of this? How were you all able to overcome such, dire moments? And not
You
only,
do ask those questions.
yeah,
You do,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning. I am at a stage in my recovery where, and I think how, God never promised us life was going to be easy, that
mm,
we are going to have trials, right? Um, and so the real question is, why not me? Why should it be
mm,
you or her or
mm,
him? Why not me? Um, it doesn't make it easy, but that is my burden. That is my cross. And I have to carry it. But to me, the difference is what you do with that. I could choose to be bitter. I could choose to be angry and hurt other people in my path because, yeah, why me?
right.
Or I can choose to reach out to other people and say, I'm here for you. I've been where you're walking right now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
also maybe reach out to those people that are feeling like that and prevent something like that from happening. So that's been helpful in my recovery.
That's
Well, and
amazing.
I think the other thing too is um, I just didn't want Adam's death to be a waste. Um, because if he died and we just had his funeral and then that was it, then he's just gone. Um, and so we use our experience to help other people, and that way it keeps him alive.
I
And
love that. And
yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but what I'm hearing, like the overall theme for your marriage and for dealing with trauma, there's a few handful of things you continuously say is one, communicating. But I've heard you say to also learn what it is, the mental illness or the trauma that the other person is going through. Be a support team. Make sure you listen. And at the end of the day, seek out professional help and to recover from that trauma? Are those kind of things that you would say help you get through these things? I mean, is that what
Yeah.
you feel like
Yeah.
through your life?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Okay.
I mean, we were really fortunate. I mean, we had you guys. I mean, we had conversations on this. We and at the time and have a very supportive family. And my brother was just awesome. I could talk to him about any of it or all of it. My sister, the same thing. And they would follow up and check up on us and see how we're doing. There's my brother's spouse. They really just jumped in and really helped us, and our family like coalesced around us. And if had we not had that, I don't know
We would have been
where
lost.
we would have just been
Right.
lost because we were I mean we found him dead in our basement, and there's no words at all. It's just awful to say the least. And that's your flesh and blood, and they're
Baby.
Absolutely.
your baby. And and her sister Anne, she stayed with us that very first night. And everybody just dropped what they were doing, and it was on Christmas Day, so of all times. And I will forever thankful for both sides of the family for helping us
Mhm.
through that. Um, the other is we found a great community in our church. And I know there's lots of different thoughts on that, and people have had bad church experiences on and on.
Yeah.
But
We have to.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But overall, um, the our pastors helped, and our church was more like a hospital for the mentally wounded people, like we were. And we were able to find people that are Christ centered, and that has been our focus. And we find a ton of healing in the Bible, um, and that's just the way our lives are going. And I think as much as anything, between our family and our church family and our pastors and Christ Jesus and God through the Bible itself, we have come to a spot of I would say awesome healing.
Yes.
It's been really good.
And I think listening to you guys, thank you guys both so much for sharing your story. But listening to all of this, I hope that it provides hope to other listeners, that maybe they can take some of the things you've done, like you were saying, Heidi, like you didn't get help until you were 60, like professional help, like that you didn't even know you really needed to do. You thought that it was healed. So hopefully it'll help somebody else that's younger and they can conquer and start recovering and healing, and hopefully that will
Absolutely.
help their marriage in the long run as
For
well.
sure. Absolutely a story of hope, and knowing that, you can get through anything as long as you believe in it. Finding a source of community, trust, vulnerability within your partner, and just knowing that things are going to work out in your favor, and just you you created a foundation within your relationship by saying the D word is not a thing for us,
Yes.
Right.
and
Yeah,
with
it's just
that
not
being the
discussed. Yeah.
yeah, and with that being the foundation, we now know that we're going to make it through anything and
Literally
everything.
anything. 'Cause
And here you are
Yeah.
now. And then just to endure again what you have, and to share your word with everyone, and to continue to help lives of everyone. Adam's story will forever live on because of the beautiful parents that you are and continue to be. So we
Thank
just
you.
appreciate you for sure. And for our listeners, if you don't know what NAMI is, if you could just share what that acronym stands for. Go ahead,
National
Teresa.
Alliance on Mental Illness.
Okay.
It's nationwide. Every state has a state-run NAMI, and there are cities underneath that are the affiliates. Like we are the Greater Kansas City affiliate of Missouri, who's under national. So it's a
Awesome.
phenomenal organization. And if you're struggling, or if you have a family member that's struggling, there are services for both of you. There are support groups, there's classes. Um, they really did save our lives, I feel like, and our sanity a little bit. But it's all free to the public. Nobody has to pay for those services. And so that's huge too, because a lot of people will say, like, mental health, mental illness costs a lot of money. I know we were in
Right.
those and but we're not charging you anything. So come,
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing.
Well, and
Yes.
I got to tell you too, I know we're probably running out of time here, but this is the place where we were at, and it's really in NAMI we embrace humor as healthy, and but we were having so much trouble with both of our kids, which our oldest Stephanie is doing phenomenally. Her and Marlon are in a super good place right now. They're doing so well. So it's kind of a story, but we would listen to other people and their kids and all the amazing things that were going on in their lives, and then their family runs into deep trauma, and the grandfather is so upset because his granddaughter was accepted to Princeton, and he is a Harvard graduate, and he wanted her to go to Harvard, and there's this big division in the family, and it's just terrible. And and Heidi and I would sit there and shake our heads. And it's like, we completely understand. Our son was fired from Subway after only 2 weeks.
Yeah, another one of our NAMI principles is we don't judge anyone's pain. It's
And
less
less
than
than
our
our
own.
own.
Yeah, I
So you
like
have to
that.
go
I
with
like
that, I'm
that.
sorry that happened to you.
Yes,
But then again, I
man.
think if that's the most painful thing that's ever
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah.
Yeah,
God
that's a
bless you.
great story. Yeah.
So
Yes.
you
Oh,
had asked earlier though what advice we would give to other parents who've been through similar traumas. Don't blame.
Yeah.
You blame yourselves enough, individually. Just refrain from the blame game. You got to love on that person. And it's like Joe says often, well, she's in just as much pain as I am. Why would I want to hurt her like that? And vice
yeah.
versa. Um, you have to support them. You have to be there to listen when they're hurting. And so often people are like, I don't have time for this, or I don't understand it, so I don't want to deal with it. But
Yes.
when you're in a marriage and when you love one another, you owe that to that
Yeah,
other
that
person.
other
Yeah.
person is not a puppet. They just don't,
Right.
yeah, and they can't read your mind, and they're not puppets, and they're their own person. And so you have to
Yes.
respect that.
Mhm.
You respect them as
Absolutely.
their own,
It
yeah.
is. Well,
Yeah.
because if you're pointing the finger, you're assuming that person did not love them as much. Well, if you
Exactly.
had not said or done this, yeah, but you did this, and it's like Joe said, ultimately he was very, very sick. No one was to blame.
Right. Well, we
I
thank you guys both so much for coming on and telling your story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. We're definitely honored to be around you guys. We'll take every minute we can get.
yeah.
Oh, we love you guys.
Okay.
I hope that Heidi and Joe's story can reach to someone. I know they've had a lot of traumas they went through in their life, and I appreciate them sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this show all the time. The purpose of this platform is to be vulnerable and air out some of the things that you've experienced to help others. And this is just a great, great opportunity that we've had on today. So appreciate for all of you listening again. And you know what it is. Be blessed, be you, just be. We out.